I heard the crack before I saw what happened. It wasn't loud, just a sharp, wrong sound like a rifle casing hitting stone. I'd learned, over 23 years as a combat engineer, that the quiet sounds are the dangerous ones. Derek was 3 feet ahead of me on the overlooked trail, talking about school, about his climbing gym, about nothing that mattered anymore. Time did a strange thing then. It stretched and thinned, like glass pulled too hot. Dust puffed up with a railing split. Metal sheared. My hand shot out, grasping at nothing. I was 64 years old, but in that instant, I wasn't old at all. I was just a grandfather who refused to watch his grandson fall. The railing gave way completely, dangling over the cliff edge like a broken promise. Derek's body pitched forward, momentum carrying him past safety, past balance. My body moved before my mind could argue. Muscle memory kicked in, old drills, old instincts, things my mind had tried to forget since Afghanistan. I dropped flat to my stomach, boots scraping rock, chest slamming hard enough to knock the air out of me. I slid toward the edge and caught a fistful of Derek's jacket fabric as his weight jerked against my grip point 20 feet below. His face was white, eyes huge, feet searching for rock that wasn't there. My boots skidded on loose gravel. Beyond him was nothing but air and a 200-foot drop into a boulder-strewn ravine. My shoulders burned. My hand screamed. "Grandpa," he said, his voice thin with terror. "Don't let go." "Never," I said, and meant with everything I had left. That's when I heard Melissa's voice, sweet concern, perfectly calculated. Oh my God, what happened? She and Marcus appeared together, side by side, like they'd rehearsed it. Too neat, too sudden. They said they'd been taking photos of the autumn colors. The Rockies glowing behind them like a postcard. Something in my gut tightened. The same quiet warning I used to get on patrols, right before everything went wrong. Afghanistan taught me to listen to that feeling that I kept my eyes on Derek, but my mind ran a rapid assessment. Derek was 6 feet tall, solid muscle, all that climbing since he was 12. Heavy, the fabric of my hands stretched, threads popping one by one. I shifted my weight, elbows digging into stone, pretending calm while calculating angles and distance. Marcus hovered closer, not close enough to help, but close enough to watch. The tearing fabric told me time was running out. Marcus finally spoke. "Maybe we should wait for help," he said, his tone reasonable, almost kind. "This looks dangerous." Dangerous. The word landed wrong. His movements were too slow, too careful, like he was afraid of committing to anything. When I glanced up, his face didn't show panic. It showed calculation. That was the second red flag. "No," I snapped, forcing my voice steady. "I was a combat engineer for 23 years. I need you to grab my belt. Now." Melissa and Marcus exchanged a look, just a flicker, silent communication. In that moment, I knew they weren't frozen by fear. They were deciding. The fabric ripped another inch. Derek cried out. I didn't wait anymore. I shifted into a mountain warfare technique I hadn't used in 3 decades. One smooth motion, roll brace, pull, using the ledge, my hips, and gravity instead of raw strength. My shoulders screamed in protest, joints lighting up like warning flares, but it worked. Derek's feet found stone. I coached him through it in the same calm command voice I once used under fire. 6 feet lateral. Hand over hand. Breathe. He reached the intact section of railing and hauled himself up, shaking but alive. Derek was safe. Now I could finally turn my full attention to the 2 people who hadn't lifted a hand. They stood too far away. That was the first thing that didn't sit right with me. People who see a kid almost die don't hover at a distance like they're afraid of catching something. They rush in. They grab. They kneel. Melissa and Marcus did none of that. They stayed back, just outside the circle of chaos, like observers instead of participants. Melissa's hand was clamped around Marcus's arm with white-knuckled force, her face locked in something that looked like concern until you stared too long. Then you saw it. Panic, barely controlled, leaking through the cracks that MY mind started lining things up fast and cold. 3 days' worth of little moments replayed like a montage. Marcus had suggested this trail, called it quiet, underrated, a little dangerous in the way men like to brag about. Melissa had insisted Derek go first on the narrow sections, saying he was younger, steadier. 2 nights ago at dinner, she casually brought up Derek's insurance policy, joked about how grown-up responsibilities sneak up on you. Last month, she'd encouraged him to increase it. She was listed as the beneficiary. And then there was that morning, 0600 hours. I'd been awake in the tent, watching the light change through the mesh, when I saw Marcus crouched at the overlook railing, running his hands along the bolts. I told myself he was being cautious. Now I understood the truth. He wasn't checking safety. He was checking his work. Derek staggered toward me, still shaking, and wrapped his arms around my chest. "Grandpa," he said, breath hitching, "you saved my life." I held him tight. That's what family does. I let that sit for a second, then turned my head just enough to look at them. "Funny thing about that railing," I said. I inspected every section this morning. Old habit. Engineering brain. Never shuts off. It was solid. Marcus's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. Practice. Melissa, though, fear flashed across her face before she could stop it. "Mountain trails degrade fast," Marcus said smoothly. "Freeze-thaw cycles. You got lucky. Incredible reflexes for a man your age." "Luck had nothing to do with it," I said. "I spent 23 years learning how to read situations where people get hurt on purpose. You learn to read movements, intentions, enemies." The word landed hard. Melissa forced a laugh that cracked halfway through. "You're in shock," she said quickly. "This has been traumatic. We should leave. Right now." I ignored her. "Why were you examining that railing this morning around 0600 hours? I said the time precisely. Military habit. Derek looked up at me, confused, which only made the moment heavier. Marcus hesitated. Just a fraction of a second too long. Someone loosened those bolts. I went on. Someone who knew this route. Someone who knew Derek would go first. Someone who knew help would be hours away. And someone who stood to gain something if he didn't make it. "That's insane," Melissa said, but her voice broke. My eyes still worked just fine. I said. Marcus sighed, and when he looked at me again, the mask was gone. What stared back was cold, flat, calculating. He glanced at Melissa, and in that look was everything. Confirmation, partnership, guilt shared. "You're a smart old man," he said. "Too smart for your own good." Then he moved, not toward me, toward Derek, that I didn't think. I reacted. 23 years of training snapped back into place like it had been waiting. Strength isn't about looking strong. It's about knowing where to put force. I caught Marcus's wrist, twisted, stepped through his momentum, and redirected it. His feet left the ground. He crashed backward into the same sabotage railing, metal screamed. Bolts popped. The railing gave way completely. Marcus caught himself at the last second, hanging over the ravine the same way Derek had. Terror finally flooding his face, I looked down at him. "I have no intention of saving you." Melissa collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "I didn't want to," she cried. "Marcus said it would be quick. An accident. The money, we could start over. He said you were old, that you wouldn't notice." She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Who are you?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. "A teacher," I said, "and a grandfather." I tapped the screen. The recording stopped. "This has been running since the moment you started acting strange." Derek stared at it, stunned. And I added, pulling out a second device, "I always have a backup plan." The GPS beacon blinked steadily. "Activated 20 minutes ago. Search and rescue is 15 minutes out. RCMP's with them." Marcus's face drained of color. Melissa cried openly. I put a hand on Derek's shoulder. 3 lessons, learned the hard way, burden to both of us forever. Always check your equipment. Always have a backup plan. And never trust anyone who tries to isolate you from the people who love you. The womp-womp of rotor blades rolled through the trees before I saw the helicopters. 2 of them, one search and rescue, the other RCMP, cut low over the ridge and settled about 50 meters down the trail. When the emergency beacon was handed over, no one questioned it. They moved fast, efficient, professional. Derek sat on a rock beside me, my hand resting on his shoulder, both of us shaking now that the danger had somewhere else to go. You're smart, I told him quietly. Kind. Driven. Those are good things. He nodded, eyes still glassy. But they attract predators too. Melissa didn't want love. She wanted payday. I told him what to watch for. The push insurance increase. The way she avoided long-term plans. How she tried to pull him away from friends and family. Marcus showing up at exactly the right time. When something feels wrong, I said, listen, experience teaches you to notice the inconsistencies. Derek swallowed hard. I almost died today. But you didn't, I said. And here's the hard part. You have to be maddest at yourself. He looked at me, stunned. You ignored warning signs because you wanted to believe. We all do. None of us wants to think someone we care about could hurt us. I let the words sink in. The world has people who smile while they plan destruction. That doesn't mean you trust no one. It means you pay attention. You value long relationships over new promises. And you listen when your gut whispers before it has to scream. The RCMP took statements, photographed the railing, bag tools, read rights. Marcus stared at the ground. Melissa wouldn't stop crying. The recording went straight into evidence. Derek was checked over, bumps, bruises, scrapes, a little shock. When they offered him the helicopter, he shook his head. I'm walking down with my grandfather. So we did the long way. With 2 officers behind us in the mountains, finally quiet again 0.8 months later, we sat in the courtroom. They laid it all out. Marcus's 2 prior accidents that never quite added up, Melissa's hidden debts climbing past $60,000, the plan to split a $300,000 policy and disappear. The recording played. Melissa's mountain confession echoed through the room. The jury took less than 4 hours. Marcus got 25 years. Melissa got 15. Derek stood and spoke about trust, about how violating it leaves scars deeper than bruises. Life didn't end there. It restarted. Derek met someone new, Amanda, a teacher at a community center. No drama, no rush. He told me he was taking it slow and asked if I'd meet her. I was honored, but I told him the truth. Trust yourself. Just keep your eyes open. 2 years later, they got engaged. I watched closely and saw what mattered. Genuine care, equal footing, respect that didn't need proving. Marcus is still in prison. Melissa was released on parole and moved to Ontario. Derek canceled his life insurance policy. I'll get one, he said, smiling, when I have kids. I squeezed his shoulder. Always, I told him. That's what family does.